Okay. Hey, hello. Hello, Xavier, Valerie, for who are actually watching this live. Hello, anybody else who might be watching this, or if you're watching live or watching the VOD. I'm Sean, librarian, writer, geek. Here's various places to find me. Find me: YouTube, general internet, and the one social media site I'm actually active on. Uh, so yeah, last week, yeah. So yeah, last week, was it last week or the week before? It might have been the week before. I'm forgetful like that. Yeah, it might have been the week before. I don't know. Last time, yes. Last time we did a Friday stream, Dragon Age was not cooperating, so I decided, okay, let's take a look through the Kobold Press's Tales of the Valiant Player's Guide. And that was fun. It was something different to do, something I'd been wanting to do for a little while, and apparently it's been doing. That video has been getting decent. Well, more views of that. People have viewed that than have viewed like a lot of my other stuff. So, okay, we're gonna have to. And I hate to leave it. I hate to leave anything halfway done. So yeah, we're gonna maybe finish looking through that, and we'll see how well that goes. Probably gonna try and just do other character creation stuff, go through some of the mechanics. If that go, depending on how much time, probably get into the soon. I'm gonna probably start doing Fallout soon, because I'm realizing that Sea of Stars, we're actually getting close to the end of Sea of Stars, I believe. So yeah. Well, first I have to play through the first one. I have to play through Fallout 1, then I can get to Fallout 2. Ooh, okay, you gotta give me time. And before I can do any of that, I need to finish Sea of Stars, so, give me time. And I may or may not decide to fiddle with my schedule at that point, because, Fallout Friday sounds good because it has the nice alliteration to it, whereas Thursday is kind of eh. But anyway, that's not what we're doing. We're not doing Fallout just yet. We're not doing that stuff yet. We're gonna be looking at Tales of the Valiant, Kobold Press's tabletop game that is pretty much largely, if not entirely, compatible with D&D 5th edition, because Kobold Press has put out a lot of 5e content. So yeah. Okay. So anyway, let's hop over to that thing. All right. Aha. Okay. So once again, very nice cover. Very much digging it. And all right. So last time, we'd only actually managed to get through the classes, which, admittedly, yeah, there's a lot. There's quite a few of them. And, even just skimming through them, there's a lot to look at. So we're going to pick up more or less where we left off with Lineage and Heritage, which is Kobold Press made the very intelligent decision that, a lot of, a number of other games that have come out over the past couple of years have, which is D&D-esque games, and that is basically separating out the two things that are usually race, ancestry, whatever you want to call it. We're separating out the biological aspects from the sociological aspects, so that now you can do those characters who are like, I'm a human, but I want to be a human who was raised by dwarves, or I want to be, I don't know. I want to be a dwarf who was raised by elves, or something like that, or an orc who was raised by elves, or by gnomes, or something weird like that. Because people are not, anyway. But before that again, I'm going to comment quick about the art. Nice that we managed to not fall into that same art trap. Tabaxi raised by dwarves who think she's a dwarf. I mean, I don't know if they might think that, they might not, I don't know. It certainly would be interesting, but you could potentially kind of do that with this. But actually, something I want to comment about with this piece of art, I feel like, I wonder if this was like an earlier take or a different take on the dwarf wizard character, because like, okay, these two look, okay, this is our human fighter, this is our elf rogue, they look more or less the same as they do in the other versions, but this is a very different. I don't hate it. I actually really like this design, because this does not fall into the typical dwarfy thing. He's kind of got, I don't know, I want to say he's kind of got the thing with the beard. It looks, I feel like, I don't know, vaguely Mesopotamian maybe, I don't know, but it's definitely a cool look and I like it. Plus, it's cool that it's like, yeah, he's clearly a wizard, but also guy's got some guns. Just because he's a wizard doesn't mean he's scrawny. Anyway, so yeah, they explain what specific stuff about what lineage, and I'm gonna say this: I'm still not 100% I'm not 100% on the terminology. I don't like lineage and heritage. I feel like they're just a little too similar, that there's a little too much overlap in my head. This could just be me, but like when I feel like, okay, you could have gotten lineage and culture or these two things are a little too similar in my mind, and they both end in the letters AGE, so it's like, yeah, I don't know. But anyway, yeah, lineage is the biological elements of this stuff. So yeah, gonna go through those real quick. So we got like age, roughly when you reach adulthood, size, speed, certain other traits that characters might have. Like, for example, here's our first lineage is the Beastkin, which is just kind of a nice little catch-all for all your anthropomorphic animal peoples. And, whatever, but get things like, okay, sure, proficiency with one of two skills, natural weapons, in addition to, the other typical stuff. And, hey, we actually have option to cover various types of anthropomorphic animal things. Like, okay, do you want to fly? Do you want to be like, fast and climb trees? Do you want to be able to swim? Do you just want to be big and tough? Admittedly, there could probably be more options, but I feel like that covers a decent number of options right there. Dwarves are dwarves are basically unchanged for what you'd probably expect if you're coming into this from 5th edition. I do kind of like that Dwarven toughness got moved to just being a lineage thing, that, like, all dwarves get that extra hit point every level. I don't know. It's kind of nice. Excuse me. Elves are, yeah, largely unchanged. Let's see. Yeah, they don't have the. They obviously dropped the weapon proficiency stuff, though. I think that was a high elf, wood elf, dark elf thing. But yeah, okay. Advantage on perception check. That's fine. Advantage versus certain magic effects, trancing, all that's fairly standard. I guess I kind of like that the elf art is like a wood elf instead of, or sort of more of a wood elf rather than high elf or whatever. But and then the human is a wizard, but also with a sword. Which is well, we'll get to that. Maybe, kind of, sort of. Humans, yeah, Kobold Press kind of made the decision of going with, okay, the variant human from the player's handbook? Yeah, we're just going to go with that option instead of the, the standard one. Mostly because, like, yeah, there's no way to, there is, as near as I can tell, yeah, there's no boost to ability scores anywhere in character creation. So that's good news, bad news. So, instead, hey, wow, humans get 2, let's see, proficiency with a skill and a talent of your choice, which is their version of feats. So, that's kind of nice. Kobolds. It's Kobold Press. They have a thing. They have, kobolds. They have to have kobolds, which, I mean, I will give you credit. Hey, yeah, sure. Why not do kobolds? Kobolds are fun and interesting. Paizo did goblins in Pathfinder 2nd edition. Why not? And I do find it interesting they decided, okay, right, we have 2 general types of kobolds. We have the smaller kobolds who will claw you, bite you, whatever, if you attack them. And then we have the more larger sized kobolds that just have they're just tougher and have some, natural armor and are just, bigger and tougher. Yes. Moving on. Orcs. Yes, orcs are just their own thing. No half orcs, no half elves, no half anything. I don't know if you can actually do a half orc or half elf in this. I'm not sure how you would do that, other than just saying, okay, I'm gonna pick this lineage and go with the other heritage and kind of whatever. I don't know. Anyway, so let's see. Yeah, something to change. Orcish perseverance. So instead of just doing, so they tweaked it. So instead of, like, well, one, they gave orcs the same kind of perception advantage that they gave to elves, which is very cool. But also, like, okay, instead of right, you get knocked down to 0 hit points, you can pop back up with 1. Instead, it's like, okay, if you would die from, like, suffocating or gaining too much exhaustion, you just kind of go into a coma. which is an interesting thing to do, if nothing else. And also, hey, yeah, if there's the save at the end of turn thing, you can instead do the save at the beginning, which that's also really cool. And with the Siderians, they basically combined took the Azamar and Tieflings and said, you're basically the same thing now, which, I think Advanced 5e did the same thing, because it's like, why not? Stuff you get, yada yada yada. I actually, going through this earlier today, I did not realize that, hey, wow, they can see in magical darkness, which is not something most other folks get. That's pretty cool. So I think there's a resistant. Then, we have the, okay, which type of extraplanar entity DNA do you have? In which case it's, okay, is one of your... Yes, they can see through advanced darkness. They can, which is very cool. Right. Let's see. So, yeah. Let's see. You have the Celestial, which is, that's your half angel something, whatever. And you get the... Right, sprout fancy glowy wings for a little while. For, was it a minute? Yeah. And, deal damage, deal, what is it? While transformed on your turn, yeah, you can deal radiant damage instead of whatever other damage you normally do. And then we have the Fiendish one, which is, your typical Tiefling option, and... Hey, that is what it is. And you also get a cool transformation, 1 minute transformation, and yeah, it's just basically here. Their creatures are going to be frightened of you for at least a round. So that's kind of interesting and cool. And small folk is one of those this is one of those interesting things. I think it's a decision I think is interesting. Small folk is basically combining. Yeah, they combined gnomes and halflings into a single lineage, which I kind of think was probably a good decision, because I honestly feel like there's really not a huge distinction between gnomes and halflings in mechanically speaking. Like, yeah, I know gnomes get this stuff and halflings get other stuff, but it's like, plus, well, I don't know, I guess this way, well, I don't know, I do kind of feel like, yeah, gnomes and halflings, there's some blurring together there if you're not careful, and yeah, they share a number of similar traits. Something I did know. So now we kind of boiled it down to, okay, gnomes have dark vision and no minor illusion. Halflings have advantage to be against charmed and frightened. They can both move through the space of a medium or larger sized creature, as well as hide behind a medium or larger sized creature. Something I did kind of notice is that I think every lineage has a base walking speed of 30 feet? And that just struck me as kind of odd. Like, I don't think it's a bad thing. Because, it's annoying to have to go, like, okay, well, most lineage, whatever, ancestry things, yeah, okay, most of them can get 30 feet, but you, for some reason, don't get 30 feet, but I don't know. I can understand doing away with it, but it still felt, noticing it for the first time, it still felt kind of like, that's odd. Well, anyway, moving on. So yeah, heritage is the other half of this, and that's basically, where'd you grow up, what cult, where you from, that kind of thing. It determines things like, okay, how many other languages do you speak mostly? Do you have any particular skills, and that kind of thing. Other options you might pick up from just having grown up in a place like this. And so again, I do kind of like that we included the list of, okay, here's your here's some languages, here's the typical lineage of the people, of beings who speak it, and of course what script does it use in written form. And again, something that kind of struck me is okay, it's like, yes, of course, dwarves typically speak Dwarvish, elves speak Elvish, gnomes speak Gnomish, etc., etc. And I know this is not new, and it's certainly not unique to Kobold Press, but just thinking about it today, it's like, it's weird that we're having like these, okay, people, a language associated with a particular biology. Like, okay, elves wouldn't speak. Like, gee, why is the language elves mostly speak called Elvish? Why is there one language that elves seem to speak and one language that dwarves seem to speak, and so on? And I get I get that not all game designers are not Tolkien, who's going to come up and are not going to come up with 3, 4, 5, 10 different languages for each ancestry or whatever to have. We don't need to have all that because that's just going to clutter things up. And again, this is not a complaint lobbed at. I'm not saying this Kobold Press is bad for doing this. I understand, hey, we have to kind of simplify some things. But, it's just one of those things that just kind of occurred to me today. Anyway, I appreciate that they kind of did sort of include different, like, okay, here are the typical heritages, here are all the lineages, and here's what heritages they tend to fall under. So it's not necessarily, you don't have to be one. You don't have to specifically be go with one of these options. But like, if you want to be, if you do feel like you want to just be a typical elf, here are the heritages to pick from. If you want to be a typical orc, here are the ones to pick from. None of it. You don't have to go with it, but hey, if you don't want to go for anything weird and special, you can go with this. All right, getting into this. Anointed. I feel anointed is essentially you grew up in I believe it's supposed to be that you grew up in some kind of a religious community, possibly a cult, if you wanted to go that way. Others are like, maybe it's a cult, maybe not. Maybe you just, you grew up in a religious community. You get things. You just give that, hey, wow, thaumaturgy, that's awesome. You have advantage on death saves, that's cool. You get proficiency with a couple skills and languages. Cloud heritage is, I think, this is the first one where we have where we specifically mention a particular lineage. In this case, the cloud heritage is basically, these are your high elves. This is the high elves. You get, a cantrip. You get a free cantrip. You get a free spell. You are the magical, wizardy, whatever type culture. Cosmopolitan is, you grew up in a city with, around other crazy people, other people and stuff. Much more, aware of the wider world, I suppose, than some people. Cottage, cottage is that you want to be the kid from the Shire or whatever, you want to be somebody, the farm kid or whatever. Or you grew up in a small village farm or whatever. And it very much leans into that kind of, halfling Shire stuff, because, oh yeah, you can, here's stuff you can do on a long rest that's like, cooking food, telling stories, generally raising the spirits of your companions and that kind of thing, which that's nice. It's nice. It's interesting that that's an option. Diaspora, I find it. I think including the a diaspora heritage, which is like, your people have been, your people are forced from their homes for some reason, and now live in kind of, little enclaves around in different places, trying to maintain your culture and traditions and whatnot, against the passage of time. And I think it's a very cool thing that this was included as a possible heritage. Not because like, oh well, it's cool that these things exist in reality, but because not that it's not cool that these kinds of people exist in reality, but it is cool that we are representing that reality, that this is a real thing. Maybe somebody wants to play through that kind of experience, so that's neat. Anyway, Fireforge, I believe this is the second one to mention a specific lineage, and that would be dwarves. Fireforge seems to mostly be the dwarves as craftsmen, forging stuff, making things, being around heat and fire and that stuff, and being used to that, working with, obviously, smithing tools specifically. Grove Heritage is the other stereotypical elf thing. This is basically, you are a wood elf. You can hide in the forest, you can climb trees really fast, etc., etc. It's there. It exists. I guess I can't really be super excited about it. Okay. Nomadic heritage. I'm not sure how to feel about this one. I mean, I get it, especially as this is the other one that is mostly associated with humans. I guess as kind of the the alternative to the cosmopolitan, very stay in one place, build the big city, build these large communities, whereas whereas nomadic is more like the logical opposite of that, where it's you're moving around regularly and maybe you don't know as much about the world, but you know how to live and survive out in the wilderness and that kind of thing. Salvager, I feel like, I don't know. It's hard to explain because this is very much this is apparently the idea is like, right, you grew up, your people, you live on the fringes of society, or you live in a place where materials and food and resources and such are kind of scarce, so you've maybe had to make do with what you can find. And I think that's cool, but I'm also kind of wondering, like, how you would even have society like that, except in, like, a kind of almost post-apocalyptic setting. I don't know. Next one, Slayer, which the way it's described is basically, yeah, your people hunt monsters. That's what you do. You're very good at hunting and tracking and doing all that kind of stuff, which is like, okay, sure. That's certainly an interesting culture. Stone Heritage is the other mostly dwarven thing, and this is more leaning into dwarves as also dwarves as artisans, but more in building things and working with stone and that kind of stuff, as opposed to working with a forge. Supplicant, again, this is the one I feel was definitely intended as, right, you want to play a kobold, this is the one. If you want to play the typical kobold, this is what you want. Because it's like, yeah, your people, whatever, are in service to some big, powerful entity. And maybe, obviously, maybe not super happy about. Well, you've learned to avoid being noticed, avoid causing trouble, that kind of thing. Vexed, again, because Vexed and Anointed are the Siderian general Siderian leaning heritages, and Vexed honestly is kind of like the logical opposite of the Anointed, whereas like Anointed is like, you've been chosen by the gods, there is a special sign surrounding your birth, you are special, whatever, and accept that. Vexed is more like, yes, you have been chosen by some greater power, and your response is to go, yeah, screw that, I don't want anything to do with that, thanks, bye. Which I love. That's great. More of that, please. Want some of that stuff, yes. And I believe, yeah, the last heritage is the Wildlands, which is, yeah, you grew up way out in the wilderness. natural world, primordial energies, etc., maybe, you didn't hunt the stuff you're you are friendly to animals and such and know how to interact with them and avoid upsetting them. I don't know. It's something interesting. Moving on. Next chapter. Okay, backgrounds and talents. This is where things start to get fun. Well, I won't say fun, but hey, we're moving on to something new. Something maybe a little more familiar. I don't know. Okay. So yeah, background is obviously, this is what did you do before you became an adventurer? And as I said before, talents are, based this system's version of feats, which are, it's those nice little things that give you stuff. And I do like how they treat. Well, we'll get into talents a little later, but so the way Kobold Press decided to do this is that okay, you get a background, and the background gives you, you get to pick some school proficiencies. You might get to pick some tools or language proficiencies, and you get a talent. You get to pick a talent, usually from a list of 3. And again, we'll get into more on talents when we get to that section. But we'll go through the backgrounds as we first. Okay, so and yeah, some of these are a lot of these are very much based on stuff from the 5e Player's Handbook, but maybe tweaked a little bit. So, like, the first one is Adherent, which is basically Acolyte, but maybe not so much, but potentially something, maybe not just a religious organization, but also potentially just some other larger organization, even though the equipment includes, a holy symbol. Why would I have a holy symbol if I'm just part of some large international organization? I don't know. But, yeah. So, yeah, we got that. You got the list of possible talents. In this case, Field Medic, Mental Fortitude, or Ritualist. Get into those, exactly what those are later on. And the thing I liked, because I know in 5th edition, and I did mention this when I first looked at this, so 5e I think has gosh, I don't even remember what the terms are. It's like bonds and flaws and traits. I don't know. No, something like that. And that's all well and good, and it does help build, flesh out a character more if you absolutely need to flesh out this character. But I kind of like adventuring motivation, because that's more okay, but seriously, why are you here? Because it's why are you not still doing this thing? Why are you now out here doing this other thing? And I like that they give some options. Anyway, okay. Next, Artist, which, again, it's Entertainer from 5e, but broadened out, because now instead of just, being somebody who plays music or maybe possibly dances or sings or whatever, you can also be, you did poetry, or you were an actor, or you painted or made sculpture, that kind of thing. thing. You could be a puppeteer. That's cute. That's interesting. That's different. It's just something different. Courtier is basically noble, but maybe toned down a little bit because it's, you were maybe not a member of a noble family, but you were certainly, high up in society. Let's see, what are some of the adventuring options? Been cast out from court in disgrace. Adventuring my best way to find redemption. Nice. Forging alliances for the benefit of the realm. Danger's my obsession and adventures, how I'll slake my thirst for it. Oh, fun. That sounds like a fun motivation right there. I'm literally doing this to get an adrenaline high. I love it. Okay, Criminal is probably the most just direct pull from 5e. Like, you even get to know Thieves Can't, which is like, why? That's great. That's weird. Like, you get to know Thieves Can't just because you happen to be a criminal. I do find it interesting they included a criminal secret. Secret is criminals collect secrets and often is coined during the life of crime. Alright, sure. That's interesting and may or may not tie into motivation. Homesteader, it feels like, this is you lived on the fringes of civilization, I suppose, is the best way to describe it. You lived on the frontier, that kind of thing. Hopefully not going to do any of the nasty colonialism stuff, but, just that it admittedly, yeah, that kind of stuff is... That sort of thing is just kind of baked in at this point, let's be honest. It's hard to do D&D or any variant thereof without at least some amount of the colonialist settler mentality being at least a little bit there. Maker is interesting because I feel like the closest in 5th edition might be like guild artisan, I guess. Whatever it is, you were a person who you made a living making things, whatever it is. So, yeah. Definitely feels like that's intended to line up with a certain class and background stuff. Initially, I thought that that Outcast was supposed to be the equivalent of the Outlander thing, but now I'm wondering if maybe the Homesteader is more the Outlander, and the Outcast is more like the Urchin. Because that's another different. There's a difference between 5e backgrounds and Tales of the Valiant background, and these backgrounds is you don't get a special trait, you don't get a special thing from your background. You get skill proficiency, maybe some other tool or other proficiencies, and you get to pick a talent. You don't get okay, well, I can, I'm a noble, so therefore I can pull some strings and get a meeting with some important person. Or, I'm an urchin, so I know how to move around in urban areas very quickly. So, But yeah, I feel like Outcast seems to be more the, you know, yeah, you lived on the fringes of society. You were not necessarily accepted, approved of, whatever, if you want to call it that. Rustic, I think, is the most... Rustic background feels like the most unique, I guess, is the way to put it. Or at least sort of, but also not, because I think Rustic more or less seems to be, yeah, you're just some kid, you're just some random person who used to have a regular life and a regular normal job or whatever, and just decided, you know what, I think I'm going to become an adventurer. I was like, okay, weird. But okay, you know, like, the examples are like, sure, you're the blacksmith's kid, or the shepherd, or a shepherd, or an elderly dwarven miner. And it's like, you know, it's, you were living a perfectly average, normal life, and then decided, I'm going to be an adventurer for some reason. And I think, yeah, okay, scholar is, it is exactly what you expected it, what you would expect. You are smart, you know many things, you speak certain more languages. You can even pick the polyglot talent to speak even more languages, because why not? And you know, soldier is, yeah, soldier is basically soldier. It's largely pulled straight from 5th edition. Like, there's not a whole lot else I can really tell you about this. Okay, talents. Okay. This is one of those cool things that I think was a really cool and interesting design decision. So talents are basically feats. If you're familiar with the last 2-ish versions of D&D, I don't know if you want to count 3.5 as its own edition, whatever. But excuse me. But yeah, so instead of, they're not feats, they're talents, which, that's cool. Okay, but you know, if you go through any of the 5th edition rulebooks, there's a lot of feats if you're allowed feats. But what I like here is that, so technically speaking, in 5th edition, feats are an optional rule. Like, you could include feats if your DM says so, but they could also just say, no, we're not using feats, and that's it. And I think in organized play, the rule is, yeah, no feat. Feats are not an option in organized play, whereas here it's, yeah, of course feats are just a built-in core assumption of the rules. Why wouldn't they be? Yeah, no, he was not a Gith. Sorry, we do not have Gith in this game. I do think his hat is interesting. Leather helm with deer horns. Yeah, sure, why not? Anyway. So, but one of the things that Kobold Press kind of did was, yeah, it's favorite. Look, maybe someday they'll include space pirates. I don't know. Space monks. I'm not opposed to the idea. I'm just like, they're not officially here yet. I mean, you could easily convert stuff from 5e to Tales of the Valiant, Black Flag, whatever you want to call it, They even released some free conversion like a free conversion guide. But you know, I look like I mean, I'm not gonna do it for you. If you go to their website, you can find it and get it there. If you go to the Kobold Press website, you can find the guide there. And honestly, I more Gith representation. I mean, they were included in Baldur's Gate 3. One of the main NPCs, one of the possible or player character options is to play a Gith. It's not like they don't have representation. Anyway, getting back to this. So, what Kobold Press did with talents was they broke them down into 3 general categories, and depending on your class, you get to pick from 1, possibly 2 lists, depending on class, because like I think like Mechanist and Ranger get to pick from 2 lists by default. There's also subclasses that grant you access to different talent lists, like, you know, I think the Battle Mage Wizard subclass, the War Domain for clerics. You know, it's stuff where it's like, okay, there's obvious, you know, like, yes, I am mostly this, but I am now kind of also dipping into this other thing. Like, I am mostly a martial character, but I may be kind of dipping into spellcast. I am a fighter and thus a martial character, but I'm also kind of dipping into spellcasting through my subclass. So maybe having magical talents would be useful for me. And yeah, there's admittedly, I feel like there's not a ton, but there is certainly enough to be interesting. So yeah, we've got the magical talent, and some of which are familiar, some of which are more not. Yeah. Again, nice artwork. Loving it. Love the Kobold Warlock. I assume that's supposed to be our Kobold Warlock. Disarming Strike into Fireball. Okay. Yeah, we'll get... Anyway. So yes, we obviously have... What is this? Influence, manipulate worlds with your mind. Oh no. Okay, anyway. So yeah, we have some magical talents which cover... That's like... about 2 pages worth of stuff, so you got at least a couple up. Certain number of options, especially if you only get like 4 or 5. There is a Battle Master option in the... yeah, you can't really... Never mind. Never mind. I don't think you could pull that off in 5th edition, mechanically speaking, but whatever. Anyway, martial talents, obviously dealing more with, you know, fighting stuff, doing that kind of thing, being tougher, or using better equipment, that kind of thing. Again, very combat focused. And finally, the what is it? Yeah, no. Yes, the martial talents. There's some handy stuff in here, and I appreciate that at least some of these things are locked behind, like, you have to be at least 4th level or higher, because it's like, yeah, some of these are probably going to be way overpowered. Anyway, the last tree option category for talents is the technical talents, and that's more interacting with your skills or other mechanics, like the luck mechanic, which we'll maybe get to, if not this time, then probably next time. It's the honestly, technical talents is basically like everything else. If I'm being really honest here, it's okay. This isn't casting spells. This isn't combat stuff. This is that third. This is the exploration or social or whatever. Sorry, noxious apothecary. I didn't even see this. Countless hours, the art of poison crafting. Ah, okay. That's interesting. Okay. And what is this? Okay, yeah, I guess we can do equipment, magic items. Maybe we can actually finish up mechanics. Probably not, but we'll try. Okay. So yeah, now we're going to talk a little more about some of the mechanics that this game introduces that are little added bits from 5th edition and what I think about some of them. Anyway, armor is, it's mostly the same. It's more or less the same. I do like having the art because I don't know, I'm weird and I am the kind of person who's like, okay, I do prefer to have some art to go like, okay, that's what that armor would look like in real life. I think the hide armor looks just kind of funny by itself because you got a bear hood. That's cute. I did notice they added one other level of light armor, which I kind of like. I like that. I kind of appreciate it. Just because, there's those classes that are restricted to only light armor, and it kind of stinks that, like, okay, so the highest armor class you can get before having to dip into magical equipment is like a 17. So now they can at least get an 18, potentially an 18 armor class, although that comes with the caveat of, oh yeah, it's noisy, so you have disadvantage on stealth checks, so maybe not great for the rogue, but, is the rogue willing to sacrifice taking a possible ding to their stealth in the name of that slightly higher armor class? Maybe. We'll see. Yeah, the rest, again, more or less unchanged from 5th edition, which is fine. It works fine in 5e. Don't, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. Yeah, you got it. But getting into the weapons, here's where they actually added a new mechanic, and that is, again, most of the weapons look more or less the same, but they also added this weapon options thing, which is basically other stuff you can do with this weapon besides doing damage, or things you can do with this weapon that, well, fun things you can do with this weapon. Like, for example, and again, art of all the weapons, so again, you have some idea of what these all look like. I like that. I appreciate it. But weapon options like, okay, bash. You can give the target disadvantage on an attack roll. You can make them drop a thing if on a failed strength or dex save. You can slow them down by a certain amount for like a turn. Yeah, and like the ricochet shot, which is okay, sure, you can ignore cover, any cover the creature might have, as long as you have something you can potentially bounce your shot off of within like 10 feet of them. So, that's kind of cool. It's fun. It's fun little extra things to do with your weapons. Yeah, it's nice. I like it. But all right, and adventuring gear is, you know, I'm not going to go through all the adventuring gear because it's a lot of the same. I'm sure if there's a difference, I don't know what it is, and I'm not going to bother trying to figure it out because, I guess I do kind of like that. The different tool sets, they do include, like, okay, here are the abilities that will be associated with this. Here's what is probably inside. Here's what you might use it for. It's handy advice, handy bits of information, that kind of thing. And, hey, here's some sample things you could do and a DC for what it would take to do that. That kind of thing. It's, it's neat. It's good. Just good stuff to know, good stuff to be aware of and think about. Mounts, various services, yada yada. Vehicles, not terribly interesting. Hey, wow, rules for ships. Stat blocks for ships in case you feel like doing stuff involving sailing around. That's kind of nice and handy to have. Other vehicles. War wagon, which is basically a tank. That's just cool. Sand skimmer, which is, a boat that sails that moves on sand. Okay, magic items. Okay. These I appreciate what they did. Okay. Magic items, not going to spend a ton of time digging through this, but things I'm happy they included are stuff like, okay, what if you want to get a weapon or item enchanted? Okay, here's a chart for it. You just go, okay, instead of going out and having to try and find the item, you just say, you know what, here, I just want to take my sword and get a +1 enchantment on it. That's all I want. Or I want to get a particular enchantment to basically turn it into this kind of an item. It's like, okay, cool. Here's how much that's going to cost. And just done. Easy. And they did add a new level of rarity. We'll maybe look at that stuff when we get there and what's fun and interesting with that stuff. But even with the less interesting stuff, another nice thing I appreciate they did was including prices with the magic items. Oh my god. Like, I feel like that is one of the biggest pains of running Dungeons and Dragons is like, okay, if players can actually buy magic items, how much does it cost? How much does it cost to buy this particular item? How much would this sell for if they want to sell a magic item? Because I get the 5e Dungeon Master's Guide just gives here's a price range. It's like, that is not helpful. And that's why other people have put together lists of like, okay, here we decided on magic item prices. Okay, cool. Random aside, yeah, okay, cool. We have our totally not stolen apparatus of the crab. Please don't look into that where we might have gotten this idea from. Don't think about it too hard. I appreciate that, have it the things like armor and weapons. Yes, we will include a cost depending on, rarity and what it is. Yeah, mechanical crawfish. Sure, let's go. Let's go with that. Yes. On the one hand, I'm going like, okay, is a bag of holding really worth 1,000 gold? But on the other hand, I'm also going like, yeah, probably. It's just that useful. It is potentially just that useful to have, so I can't necessarily fault that decision. The non-existent case. We'll see. We'll think about it. Maybe. Maybe if we ever get around to playing this. Who knows? Yeah, lots of boots, lots of things. Yada yada yada. Yada, crystal ball. Why are there are 4 different types of crystal ball? Don't remember that, but okay. Antique sword, dimension, dragon scale mail. Very nice. There's quite a bit of this. Quite a few pages of this stuff. My gosh. It can be used for pirate character. Technically owns it, but doesn't use it because of fear of water. That's okay. That's yeah, I suppose. There's so much of this stuff. There's so much. There's so many magic items. So many write-ups of magic items. It's okay. That's interesting. Well, the concepts I thought up in my free time. That is an interesting concept. I will give you that. Yada yada yada. Pipes of haunting. That's just creepy. That's a creepy doll. I get why it's a creepy doll, but it's also a creepy doll. Yeah, various potions. That kobold's gonna explode in a minute, probably, but okay. Various rings and such. Yada 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 yada. There's a lot, just so much stuff. There's da 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 da. Okay, staves. Talked to my buddy, and he said he'd have his character drag mine on the boat since it would be a dwarf artificer. Okay, look, if you want, I'm gonna be honest. If you want to play, what is it, BJ Baracus, but with water, that's fine. But be prepared for the rest of the party to have to constantly drug you to get you on the dang boat, because yeah, if you're gonna create a character like that, yeah, we're definitely gonna have to do. We can't have that happen without you having to get on the water on many occasions. various wands and such. Okay, I think we're getting to the end of... okay, so fabled magic items. These are new. These are the items that, like, yeah, you can't sell these because no one could possibly afford them. And what I find really cool about these things are really cool because they have these are clearly items. There's only a couple of these. Let's see. Let's have him disadvantage on wisdom saves while on the water. I mean, that seems pretty basic, but yeah. Yeah, so yeah, these are super magic items that level up with the player characters. That's so cool to me. I feel like that is so cool, and I want more of this kind of stuff. I want more examples of this stuff. Like, what's this? Bloodspine armor. So, okay. At just as base. Okay. Okay, let's see. Wearing this armor, use bonus action to make melee attack against armor with the armor's spikes against a target within 5 feet on a hit. D4 piercing damage. Proficient, use strength modifier for attack and damage rolls. 5th level, you hit a creature with your armor spikes, you cause unnatural bleeding from the resulting wounds. Takes D4 necrotic damage at the start of its turn from a bleeding wound. Each time you hit the creature with the armor spikes, the damage from the wound increases by D4 at the end of its turn. Makes a DC 15 con save to end. Okay, that's at level 5. Yikes. 9 plus 1 to AC and attack and damage rolls with armor spikes. Okay, yeah, oh my gosh, it's so nasty. It's so mean and horrible. Yeah, okay. Unfortunately, there was only like 4 of these items, but I feel like that's definitely some good examples. Like, okay, here's some things you could totally do with this, and I dig that. I really do. Okay. Hopefully, gonna skim through to get some quick little mechanics. Most of the stuff is, again, unchanged from 5th edition, but one thing they did change, they dropped inspiration and replaced it with luck. And I really like this. I really like this luck mechanic. It's like, okay, so you get a luck point. You gain luck every time, once a turn, once round, whatever. You fail, you miss with an attack roll, or you fail a save, you gain 1 luck. GM gets to award luck, or alternatively, GM awards luck either for doing something really smart and clever, or hey, wow, you just survived some really cool thing, have 1 luck. However, you max out at 5 luck. If you get sick, if you do something that would earn, so spend it, because if you do something that would earn you 6 luck, you roll a d4 and your luck resets to that. And you can use luck, as a 1-to-1 roll, add to, I think probably, I want to say d20 rolls, I believe. You can spend them 1-for-1 to add to your d20 rolls. Spend 3 luck to just re-roll a d20 entirely. You cannot undo a critical hit or a critical miss with luck, and you cannot use luck gained from a critical miss to then apply it. You cannot apply that luck to that roll, and so on. All right, moving on. So that's luck. I really like it mostly because I'm not great at giving out inspiration, so having this mechanic go say like, okay, cool, you get, there's a natural way for players to gain this resource and a very much encouragement to actually use that mechanic because otherwise you lose it. Oh, they're going to be in trouble. Okay, right. Planes of existence, yada yada yada, dot stuff. Hit points, temporary hit points, healing, blah 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 blah. One last thing I want to talk about. Just one last thing. Can we get to it? Maybe. Okay, cool. Spell casting. All right. Last thing I want to talk about. Because I believe this is like the last real mechanical thing to do. Okay. Things they did with spellcasting that I really like. Okay, one, they defined sources of, where magic comes from and how it from. I like this because there are certain classes that's like, I feel like it helps to establish the vibe of these spells as opposed to, it just kind of is. Especially for classes where it's like, okay, but where is your magic coming from? Like, when a cleric casts a healing spell, how's that differentiated from when a druid casts a healing spell? Because they're two different classes. Do they get their power from the same source? Do they get their power from different sources? That kind of thing. And we've got 4 sources that they delineate in this. We've got arcane, which is your typical, and each of these, well, anyway, you have arcane magic, which is more science-y rules. Say magic words A while performing gesture B and holding material component C to get result X. It's you studied or whatever, you're manipulating the rules of reality to get results. Divine source, obviously, this generally having something to do with getting power from a deity of some sort. Or some kind of what is it? Individually accessible to God. However, divine source is also accessible to a caster who acts out of devotion to a particular community, evil pact set forth by a cult. Okay. Alright, or yeah, they get this other stuff around, but it's for divine, but it's very much a sources require devotion, awareness of others, belief in improving the world for those served. We'll see. Primordial magic is more nature and the natural world and stuff. And then finally, we have weird, which is the warlock source. It is explicitly just the warlock source because you are a conduit for some other being's power. You are not. Okay. See, the caster is the material anchor that calls unnatural energies into the world and shapes them to the caster's will. It's great. I love it. So that's one of the things I like, and each of these sources has their own spell list. Yeah, yeah, that's definitely warlock. I know, right? So again, each of these spell sources has their own spell list. There is overlap between some of them, so it's not like they're exclusive to this particular source. But I like that. This does mean that, like, yes, the sorcerer and the wizard share the same source, but there's other things that wizards get that sorcerers don't. And there's things that sorcerers get that wizards don't. Anyway, next little mechanical thing, and it's more a terminology thing. They call them spell circles instead of spell levels. I think this was changed I believe this was changed from the original alpha version, because I think there they called them spell rings, which is like whatever, and I think they didn't call them spell slots either, but they changed that, I believe, because everybody knows what spell slots are, so don't calling them circles instead of levels helps to clarify some things. Calling them something other than spell slots is just confusing things. Yeah, schools of magic, cantrips. Okay. Here's another change they made that, again, I really like. So, in 5e, there are certain spells that have the ritual tag. And the ritual tag basically means, like, right, yeah, you can cast this without expending a spell slot, but it takes time. And the thing is, for basically every class except wizard, you have to have the spell prepared. Even if you're never going to cast it with using a spell slot, you have to have it prepared to cast it as a ritual. And that's potentially just a waste of a space for a spell you could memorize. So instead, we just have, certain classes. I think it's cleric, druid, and wizard, I believe, for sure, and others can maybe get it through feats. Sorry, not feats, talents. Whatever, you know what I mean. They get access to ritual spells. And these are all those spells that take a little longer to cast, but they do nice and interesting things. And we'll kind of get a look at some of those when we get looking at the list in a second. So, like, for example, scrolling along, other stuff, blah, blah, blah. Okay, so we have the spell list. Okay. And, okay, here's the actual spells on the arcane list. Yada, 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 etc., etc. And then we get the arcane ritual list. And it's like, okay, here's the spells that you would expect. Like, okay, we have alarm, we have create familiar, we have identify. It's the spells that are like, yeah, in all likelihood, I'm never gonna cast in 5th edition. It's like, yeah, I'm never gonna cast identify with a spell slot. Why would I do that? That's a waste of time. Or that's a waste of a resource. So Kobold Press apparently just said, okay, well, instead of adding the 10-minute time requirement that's like all kind of at whatever, we just say 10 minutes pass and it doesn't matter. Instead, it's like, okay, well, now identify is just a ritual spell, and it always takes a certain amount, takes this long to cast, and you can never cast it with a spell slot, and whatever. Cool. Super nice and handy. And vastly simplified. And yet, here's the divine list and the divine rituals, and the primordial spell list and the primordial rituals. And weird spell list, and weird also has rituals, although literally the only way you can actually access the weird rituals is by taking a feat, or there's 2 ways to get access to the ritual spells on the weird list. And that's either you take the ritualist feat or you do Pact of the Tome Warlock. Those are the only ways to get access to the rituals. Otherwise, it's like, yeah, you can, if you're warlocks, don't get rituals by default. And I think that's an interesting decision, if nothing else. And yeah, okay, descriptions, and we're not going to get into those because I believe there's really... Yeah, okay, jumping after that. Yeah, now we're just getting into... Okay, conditions, yada, yada, yada. Okay, they included some interesting deities, gods and pantheons. They included some gods from their Kobold Press's special Labyrinth pantheon. I find it interesting that they included domains for some of these gods that aren't currently in the book. Meaning either they intend to include those later, or they're saying, yeah, just use the 5e versions. Which, I mean, I guess, but also, like, you know, why include this stuff if you're not going to do it? Domain I1 isn't here. Not all suggest domains appear in Cleric subclass the player's guide. Even more domains await in the Labyrinth. Domain lists are included for use with compatible material published in other Kobold Press books, including future Tales of the Valiant releases. So yeah, they're literally just going, yeah, okay, well, if you see a domain you want, but it's not in the book, well, or... hey, you listed all these domains, but I want this particular domain. Well, maybe it'll be in another thing. And yes, okay. Creatures, blah, 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 stat blocks that players might need, index, character sheets, and yeah. Alright. Okay, so. Went a little long, but yeah. So, yeah, that's the Tales of the Valiant Player's Guide. And, yeah, in general, I really do like what is there. I know there's, again, it's very much being the Pathfinder first edition to 5e's to this. It's doing the Pathfinder thing of, okay, we're changing things a little bit, but not too much, because we don't want to alienate our audience, that kind of thing. And I don't blame them. Kobold Press has put out a lot of stuff that's for 5e, and the whole point of it, I feel like the thing they promised with this is basically, yeah, we're going to create a game that's totally compatible with 5e, but isn't necessarily, but that we control. And it works. It is what it is. I think the only other thing I don't know. Okay. I may or may not be streaming next Friday because the next day I'm going to be heading off and going on vacation with the family for the first week of July because my sister is currently living up in Virginia, and my sister-in-law, she and my sister-in-law, they kind of sort of trying to make plans to say, like, it'd be really nice if we could all get together maybe once every other year or so, just to be together, because we're all spread out. We're much more spread out now, and it's been a long time since we've all been in the same place for any, except for maybe around the holidays and whatnot. But anyway, So, yeah, the only other thing I'd really want to do is I'd probably want to show off the Tales of the Valiant in Foundry, which is my virtual tabletop of choice, because they're whoever is behind the Black Flag, which is the system sort of generic Tales of the Valiant system name. They've done a pretty solid job of incorporating stuff, and they're regularly updating it with like, okay, here's stuff for this class and stuff for this class, and they did a really great job of with you know, character creation step, and just like, okay, we will literally walk you through the process of character creation on the sheet. So I kind of would want to show that off too, but we'll see if I do that next week or not. Anyway, but otherwise, that's going to be it from me for tonight. This will hopefully be up on YouTube in a couple of days. And yeah, thanks Valerie for lurking. If you're still lurking, thanks Xavier for chatting and responding to things. And again, if you're watching this on YouTube, thank you for watching this on YouTube, where it really does matter. Other than that's going to be it from me. Have a good one and good night, or whatever time it is where you are. Bye.